In 1991, the biggest album in the world wasn't supposed to exist. The band didn't want fame, the label expected failure, and the person who made it would later regret ever releasing it. This album didn't just change music, it ended an era. This is the story of the album that accidentally changed music forever. At the start of the 1990s, rock music had a very specific look and sound. It was loud, glossy, and excessive. Big hair, even bigger egos, guitar solos that lasted longer than some songs. Bands like Mötley Crüe, Poison, and Warrant dominated radio and MTV. The formula worked, and the music industry had no reason to change it. But beneath the surface, something wasn't connecting anymore. Rock music no longer felt like it reflected real life. By the early 1990s, major record labels had become increasingly risk averse. Millions of dollars were poured into bands that looked and sounded nearly identical because safe returns mattered more than originality. Outside of Seattle, very few people understood what was happening there. The so-called Seattle sound wasn't a genre, it was a reaction. Bands weren't trying to start a movement, they were responding to disillusionment, economic stagnation, and a sense of being ignored. Nevermind would later be labeled grunge, but at the time it was simply honest music made without expectations. Nirvana was still a relatively unknown band from Seattle. Their debut album, Bleach, had been recorded on a shoestring budget and found a modest underground audience. Kurt Cobain didn't look like a rock star. He didn't act like one either. He was uncomfortable with attention and deeply suspicious of the music industry. Before Nevermind, Nirvana was just another underground band trying to make it in Seattle's grunge scene. They played in tiny clubs, slept on floors, and survived on fast food and small tour earnings. Band members often fought over money, creative decisions, and even what songs to record. Cobain's journals show he constantly questioned whether he was worthy of success and whether the industry would even understand his music. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't destined for fame, and yet all of this struggle set the stage for the raw honesty that would define Nevermind. When Nirvana signed to a major label, expectations were low. Nevermind wasn't supposed to be a cultural moment, it was supposed to be a small step forward. When Nirvana first pitched their major label deal, executives assumed they were just another niche act. They didn't see a band that could appeal to the masses. One label executive reportedly said, "This band won't sell 50,000 copies." Ironically, the album went multi-platinum within months. That moment highlighted something larger. The industry had completely misjudged what audiences wanted. Cobain was heavily influenced by punk ethics, the idea that sincerity and success rarely coexist. Fame felt like betrayal. Even as the band gained momentum, he worried about losing control of their identity. Cobain's fear of fame was constant. He often said in interviews that he felt like a fraud or that the media misunderstood him, but it was this tension between wanting to create authentic music and hating the spotlight that gave Nevermind its unique edge. Every scream, pause, and melodic twist was informed by someone who was afraid of the very success he would soon achieve. You can hear it in the quiet, loud dynamics, in the sarcasm of the lyrics, and in the way vulnerability and anger exist side by side. The band wanted the album to sound aggressive, but not artificial. Producer Butch Vig helped strike a balance between raw energy and pop structure. The songs were loud but undeniably catchy. Melodies were buried beneath distortion. Hooks hid behind screams. The album's sound was deceptively complex. Songs alternated between soft verses and explosive choruses, a dynamic that would become Nirvana's signature. Cobain was influenced by the Pixies, British post-punk bands, and even folk music, blending them into something that felt entirely new. Producer Butch Vig often layered multiple guitar tracks to make the songs feel both raw and full. Small studio details, like Cobain's feedback on Smells Like Teen Spirit or handclaps in Lithium, gave the album texture listeners didn't consciously notice, but which made it unforgettable. Cobain later worried the album sounded too clean. He didn't realize that clarity would be the reason it reached millions. Even the album's cover reflected its contradiction. A baby, underwater, chasing a dollar bill on a fishhook. Innocence, exploitation, temptation. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't aspirational. It was unsettling, and it perfectly matched the world the album was about to disrupt. Come As You Are balanced invitation with unease, becoming one of the band's most misunderstood songs. Lithium captured emotional instability in a way pop music rarely dared to, and Something in the Way closed the album on isolation rather than triumph. This wasn't an album chasing hits, it was an album expressing a state of mind. Smells Like Teen Spirit wasn't meant to be an anthem. Cobain later said he was trying to write a Pixies song, but when that opening riff hit MTV, something shifted. The video was dim, chaotic, and confrontational. Its lyrics were cryptic and ironic. Cobain later admitted he wasn't writing a message for fans, he was writing about his own confusion and frustration. Yet the song became an anthem for a generation that felt unheard. Suddenly, teenagers felt seen, even when the lyrics were vague. The combination of raw energy, catchy melody, and social authenticity made it explode in a way no one predicted. It didn't spread because radio pushed it. It spread because listeners did. Teenagers taped it off MTV. They played it for friends. And suddenly something that wasn't supposed to be popular felt unavoidable. By January of 1992, Nevermind had reached #1 on the Billboard charts, knocking Michael Jackson's Dangerous out of the top spot. Record labels scrambled to find the next Nirvana. Hair metal vanished from radio, grunge flooded the mainstream, but what truly changed wasn't the sound, it was the expectation. Audiences now wanted honesty, even if it was messy and uncomfortable. The success of Nevermind came with a cost. Nirvana became the very thing they had once pushed against. Cobain struggled under the pressure of being misunderstood on a massive scale. The album that freed alternative music also trapped its creator inside a role he never wanted. That contradiction remains inseparable from Nevermind's legacy. The impact of Nevermind didn't stop in the early 90s. Its influence can be heard in alternative rock, indie music, and even modern pop. It taught artists that image wasn't everything, that imperfection could be powerful, and that honesty, even when uncomfortable, could reach massive audiences. More than 30 years later, Nevermind still feels like a dividing line. Music before it and music after it live in different worlds. Beyond the music, Nevermind influenced fashion, media, and youth culture. Flannel shirts, ripped jeans, and thrift store aesthetics became symbols of authenticity. Bands that followed, what's from Pearl Jam to Foo Fighters, carried its influence. And in modern pop and indie music, you can still hear echoes of the quiet, loud, quiet dynamic and emotionally raw lyrics that Nevermind popularized. Its success proved that audiences craved honesty, paving the way for generations of artists who dared to be themselves. If you enjoy stories about the albums and moments that shaped music history, consider subscribing. There'll be a lot more like this soon.